Starlight on her mouth, secrets in the dome. Observatories don't sleep, they keep time. When the last tour bus is a rumor in the valley and the gift shop blinks its register dark, the building switches languages. Day talks in ticket stubs and pointing fingers, in the tidy astonishment of children who still clap for Saturn. Night talks in arcseconds and dew points, in the throat-clearing grumble of the dome gear and the soft pulse of CCD coolers. Red lights replace white, the way monasteries change chants after Compline. If you've never leaned against a steel pier at 2 in the morning and felt it remember the sky while the mountain remembers your weight, you don't know how loud quiet can be. My name is Jonah, and my job is to make the entire universe behave like a system. I'm the night operator at the Ridgeway Observatory. One dome, one 36-inch Ritchie, one weather station with a temper and me, keys on a carabiner, coffee in a dented thermos, a head full of ephemerides and mercy. The telescope trusts me. I can tell if the raw drive is lying by how the hand paddle hums under my thumb. I know when a fan bearing is getting brave by the flavor of the air at the top of the stairs. I can coax a sticky slit door with cabled sweetness and a prayer to torque. The control room is my cockpit. Monitors that breathe in monochrome, software that believes math is a personality trait, a worn leather chair with my back printed into it like a story too long for its frame. Marin, my wife, then designed nights. She is the sort of person photons wait for. She calls herself a producer, but that makes it sound administrative. She builds festivals of light for cities that want their river to have opinions. She can teach a building to blush. She wore a black blazer with pockets deep enough to hide a moon and a roll of gaffer tape. Her hair smelled like cedar and something citrus that forgives the dark. On Wednesdays, if our orbits aligned, she would climb the stairs, duck past the safety sign, and sit on the edge of my console as if furniture had been invented to flatter her. She'd hook 2 fingers in my belt and lean in for a kiss with the gravity of a small moon. I would put my mouth at the warm hollow where her collarbone rehearses language and breathe until the static in her shoulders changed jobs. We were careful. The security camera in the dome is old and honest. The first odd thing arrived wearing numbers that didn't raise their voice. At 01:09 the slit jogged 5 degrees and back, a twitch only a hand would cause. The log called it a false positive from the limit switch and then apologized in its very mechanical way. 2 minutes later, the autoguider plotted a brief drift that looked like someone had leaned against the pier with the gentleness of a confession. The CCD cooler, rock solid at -20 degrees C, warmed by half a degree, then settled as if remembering the rules. The alarm didn't ring. My shoulders did. 2 nights later, the slit coughed again. The pier graph whispered. The cooler breathed wrong and then right. I scanned the access logs like a jealous librarian. No badge swipe recorded except mine. The door was a gentleman. The building had cleared its throat anyway. Technicians use powders and tapes in ways nobody puts in the manual. We keep a little jar of fluorescent tracer in the tool cabinet for fiber checks around optics. I dusted a breath of it under the inner lip of the dome control handle, a blush along the lower hinge of the service door, a little kiss at the edge of the eyepiece rack where no one should steady their weight. Then I put the jar away as if it had asked too many questions and went back to the night. Marin arrived after midnight, late from a load-in where a river had been persuaded to glow like it remembered geometry. She stole a sip from my thermos and made a face like coffee is a joke that forgives itself. "Your dome is in a mood," she said, smoothing a stray hair back from her mouth with the back of her wrist, leaving a smudge of lipstick on skin that always looked like it belonged under a spotlight. "She flirts when she's bored," I said. "I tell her not to embarrass herself." She tilted her head. There's a small angle morality takes on her face just before it arrives. I rested my palm on the side of her neck, not pressure, just the hello my hand knows, and felt something in her quiet, not like surrender but like decision. "We should have the conversation," she said. "Call it by its name," I said. "I'm a man who lives inside labels." "Open," she said, choosing a word and setting it between us like a shallow bowl. "Not chaos, not cruelty. Rules, nobody from your shift, nobody who signs my checks. We tell first. We keep each other first. Condoms like religion. Our bed is ours. The dome," she looked up as if the shutter could grant absolution, "is sacred." "You wrote the treaty before you asked me to sign it," I said, and even inside my small meanness I knew I was more impressed than hurt. "I don't want to lie," she said. "Not to me, not to the part of herself that made a river open its mouth and sing. She didn't touch me to sell it. She didn't have to. The morning told me everything a building says when it loves you enough to snitch." Under the dome handle a crescent glowed that didn't belong to my hand. At the hinge, a little mask of light smiled at the memory of fingers that shouldn't have been there. On the edge of the eyepiece rack the tracer made a pale, thin mouth of its own, and on the floor beside the pier there lay a lost earring back, the cheap nickel kind, trying to be a star. Some names arrive like press releases. The observatory social feed lit up with a guest lecture series, Cosmos for Mortals, anchored by our new board darling, a TV astrophysicist who wore leather and adjectives. Cashin Holt had a smile that made impatient people stop mid-rant. He sold complexity like romance and space like forgiveness. His documentary B-roll made telescopes look as if they had personalities, which we do, but we do not like to be told that by a man with hair. He shook my hand at the top of the stair with the exact calibration of people who read rooms like weather. "You run a tight night," he said. "The night runs itself," I answered. "I apologize for it when it forgets." He laughed in the manner of a man who wants something and has almost never been told no when he wanted it. Marin told me at our kitchen table, the kettle scolding before it sang. "I used the word I asked for," she said, and didn't make her mouth smaller to say it. "I brought it into your work. That part was wrong." She placed my hand over her chest as if calibrating a sensor and breathed. "I won't do the dome again," she said. "I won't do your walls wrong." "What time?" I asked, because hours are what a man like me uses when he's out of metaphors. She didn't answer the question because it wasn't the right one. We tried. For a season we were careful citizens of our young country. We slept with the knowledge of each other and sometimes with the same breath. I kept the jar in the cabinet and the camera pointed at stars. The slit behaved. The cooler cooled. Cashin lectured to donors who practiced nodding as a philosophy. Marin built a footbridge out of LEDs that made old men cry and not be embarrassed by it. We were fine in the way an orbit is fine until it is. The log tells the truth badly but reliably. 0236, service door bypass 3S. The pier graph made an admission. The UV light showed a smear at the edge of the ladder to the catwalk, a height that felt like a hip. In the little equipment closet where the vacuum pump minds its business, the tracer glittered a confession on the switch. And there, neatly aligned as if willing me not to invent anything, lay a satin ribbon I did not buy, the color of shame pretending to be wine. We separated the way professionals do when they have already done the math. Marin found a place with windows that bullied morning into being kinder. I kept the chipped mug the daytime docents think belongs to me and the pocket knife I used to scold tape. She took the kettle with opinions. On the sidewalk outside our building, we hugged like citizens of neighboring countries with a shared river. "Hate me clean," she said. "If you can't, don't make a hobby of it." "I'll keep it in labeled bins," I said, and we both smiled at my specific cowardice. The dome forgave me by being needy. The drive needed love. The weather station argued with dew and lost. I taught a new grad student that the telescope doesn't care what you think you know. It only respects what you can repeat. On one of those nights where the mountain lets the Milky Way drop its mask and show you every freckle, a little boy pressed his forehead to the glass of the visitor gallery and said, "I love you," to a star, as if he had invented the sentence. I slept on a couch under a coat and learned that my spine has opinions. Nadia arrived like a solution. Not noisy, only correct. She's our instrumentation engineer on contract from the city lab, the person you call when software and hardware accuse each other of lies. She smells like gloves and solder flux and something almost floral that hot plastic envies. She wears her hair in a braid that tells static it has already lost. She never uses a word she hasn't had coffee with. She can listen to a stepper motor and tell you where it got its bad habits. She has a scar across one knuckle that looks like a small galaxy. I trust people whose hands have maps. We met properly under the pier while the deck drive did its little hiss of arrogance. She lay on her back on the mat, flashlight in her mouth, and tapped a bracket with the handle of a screwdriver. "Your backlash wants respect, not force," she said around the light. "Doesn't everyone?" I said, and handed her the tool she hadn't asked for yet. The sound the bracket made after she tightened it was a confession. I had been tolerated. Now I was loved. We kissed 3 weeks later because we are the sort of people who respect sequence. It was in the small corridor between the control room and the dome, behind the blackout curtain that has outlived 3 budgets. She put her palm flat on my chest like she was checking a chassis for life, and I put my mouth in that place below her ear where breath becomes language. She kept her eyes open when her body agreed, not mistrust, delight at discovering the night could stay put while she moved in it. I let my hand rest against the side of her neck and didn't ask her to be anyone's apology. We stopped when stopping was the right verb. We smiled at each other the way mechanics do when the noise is finally gone. With Nadia, precision turned into tenderness. She warmed under my thumb at her wrist like the place clocks keep their secrets. She swung herself onto my lap in the rolling chair at 0300 and used my forearm as a whiteboard for equations she didn't need, just to have something to write while her mouth found mine slowly, as if patience were a lubricant. We made rules that our building could bless. No optics, no visitor spaces, no lying to the night to make our minute longer. Yes to the instrument room where cables are neat and privacy is an algorithm. Yes to the stairwell where the world becomes sound. Yes to the rooftop when the wind forgives us and the stars look like they have removed their jewelry. Consent was not a speech. It was a verb we did correctly, again and again. Revenge is a game I was bad at even before the dome taught me to keep records. I could have given the board a reel made of small betrayals. The bypass flags, the tracer glow, the ribbon's tired theatrics. I could have made a whisper reach a donor who would have turned it into a story about protecting culture. I could have, if I had wanted, shown Cashin something the universe doesn't forgive. His face without his narrative. But the observatory is a sanctuary for light that left its home before our species learned the word home. I will not use it as an instrument for my pride. Also, Nadia likes me best when I come to her smelling like patience instead of victory. Marin and I learned to be hospitable to each other's existence again. She stayed on as a consultant for a winter stargazing series because she's excellent and I am not small enough to set a dome on fire with my hurt. We texted like towns that share a road. She sent me a photo of Basil being rude in a window. I sent her a photo of a meteor the camera caught as if the night had practiced just for it. She wrote, "Proud of you." I didn't interrogate the phrase. Cashin remained a man people forgive on their way to forgiving themselves. I passed him once in the access stairwell. He tipped 2 fingers to his forehead like a drawing of a salute. "Your sky's obedient," he said. "It only looks that way from inside," I said, and left him to his reflection. The mountain kept doing mountain. A raccoon learned the dumpster wasn't its destiny. I rescued a drunk birder from deciding the guardrail was a suggestion. A storm marched up the valley, looked at us, and went the long way around. The slit opened and closed like a thoughtful mouth. The drives hummed their little hymns. Children cried in the visitor gallery for reasons I cannot fix and grew quiet for reasons I can. Sometimes I wake at the soft hour the night keeps for itself, in the little apartment above the old ranger station where the floor knows my name. If Nadia's calf is thrown lazy over my thigh like a comma, I set my palm lightly against the side of her neck and wait for that quick lift of breath that means yes. The difference between ending and completion has a temperature. I didn't know that before. My hand does now. Months after the jar went sulky to the back of the cabinet, the observatory hosted its donor gala, a night that dressed generosity in black ties and clever small plates. I wore black because black forgives fluorescence. Marin stood under a chandelier we rented and then bullied into behaving. Her hair was shorter, her smile the sort of thing you get to keep after you've paid for it. "Is she kind?" she asked, meaning Nadia without making the air do extra work. "She's specific," I said. "Specific is the only kindness that survives weather and screws that think they're philosophers." "Be good to each other," she said. It did not sound like a sermon. It sounded like a maintenance schedule. We clinked water because it's the only drink that tells the truth without rehearsals. Across the room, Cashin was telling a story to a circle of people who wanted to be the kind of people who get told stories like that. He laughed. They forgave him in advance. He can keep their forgiveness. I had work. A dome to keep honest, a woman to keep warm, a night to keep from becoming a witness when it only wanted to be a sky. There's no moral. Observatories aren't in the moral business. They're in the calibration business. I tell new grad students what I tell myself when the logs get clever and the mountain decides to test my religion. Align, focus, guide. Keep the sanctuaries sacred. Test before you touch. Keep records, not grudges. Remember that the light you're catching left before you did. Be humble to it. At the end of the shift, I make one last lap through the dome. I run my knuckles lightly along the pier the way you pet a big old dog who still wants a job. "All closed," I say into the empty air, which is another way of telling my chest. The slit shuts its mouth with the dignity of a curtain at the end of a good play. The drives spin down their small courage. I turn off the red light and let the dark remember me. Home is downhill and real in the way the sky is for other people. Nadia sits on my counter eating a peach like she has invented the act. She smells like flux and sugar. She sets her palm against my sternum like a tech-verifying power. I set my mouth back at the place below her ear where whisper practices and breathe the truth I want to keep. Sanctuaries are made, not found. Love is a maintenance log, not a miracle. I won't use the dome for anything but the sky. If the slit twitches again at 0109, I'll see it. I'll decide whether to reach for the jar or the patience. Lately, I reach for patience. It steadies the stars. It steadies me. And it steadies the way her breath lifts against my hand, a small yes, an honest one enough to carry down the mountain into morning.